I got a nice little video I want to show you guys. And it shows you the way stats can be used incorrectly. And one of the things that we're doing is this with the rise of analytics and the fact that everybody feels like this is the new wave where you could just blind yourself and don't watch the games and just get a printout and a sheet and you tell me whether somebody good or not is cracking me up. They're crashing out so bad, they've even discounted the pieces and parts around you. They've even discounted the regular simple things you can account for. Well, it says 60% of the people that go outside get rained on. Okay, did you take into account that 40% of them had umbrellas? No, kind of counts, don't it? When you talk about going outside, rain, what do you classify it as rain? Water, snow is rain. What is it? Is it precipitation? Does the duration count? Does climate play into a factor? No, it's just I was just doing a stat that made me look good. So don't bring all the rest of that stuff. But this, I'm going to give you just a quick little video here that it displays just how difficult, or sometimes people get into trouble because they don't take context into what we're talking about.
Greetings. Today we're going to be discussing Simpson's paradox. Before we begin, let's start with a definition of Simpson's paradox, also called the Joule-Simpson effect in statistics, an effect that occurs when the marginal association between two categorical variables is qualitatively different from the partial association between the same two variables after controlling for one or more other variables. So, what does all that mean? Let's consider the case of graduate admissions at a university. This university has 200 male applicants and admits 104 of them. They also have 200 female applicants and admit 80 of them. Wait, so 52% of the male students get in, but only 40% of the women are admitted? Is this a case of gender discrimination? Not quite. First, let's look at the graduate programs. There are 4: education, nursing, engineering, and physics. Note how the women apply disproportionately higher to the first two, and men apply disproportionately higher to the second two. Now let's look at admissions data. 20% of the men who apply to nursing and education get in, whereas 30% of the women are accepted to these same programs. For engineering and physics, men get accepted at a rate of 60%, whereas women get admitted at a rate of 80%. And thus we see that women get accepted at a higher rate than men for every one of these programs. It just seems like the opposite is true simply because women apply disproportionately to programs with lower overall acceptance rates. By controlling for each individual program, we can see that women are in fact faring better than their male counterparts in graduate admissions at this university. And that's an example of Simpson's paradox.
As you can see, when you look at statistics and data from a very shallow perspective, you get a different picture or a different story based on the level of depth that you dig into those numbers. When you talk about these things, sometimes you go into it looking for a reason to believe something. You find those reasons and you find what you're looking for and use that data to prove your point. But sometimes if you don't use context and you don't dig deep enough, you end up not figuring out or understanding the entire picture and understanding and getting a better assessment of what it is you're looking for. There is no stat that is going to tell you that Shedeur Sanders is the worst quarterback ever, even with Jamarcus Russell. If you're looking for that stat, it's going to be very difficult to find. And even if you do find a sliver of that information, it's going to be very difficult for you to add that and use that with context to prove your point. Case in point, if you want to say you want to look at quarterbacks as a whole, before saying that you are looking at quarterbacks, just take it in consideration. Go with rookie quarterbacks, right, in their first year. Also, if you want to be very in-depth, talk about which one of those rookies were getting reps. How many reps did they take? Were they taking first team reps prior to them starting? How many games during their first year did they start? At what point in junction in the season did they start? That plays a role in it, because maybe starters are out, maybe weather is inclement, maybe other quarterbacks like Jackson Dart have been playing much longer than Shedeur Sanders. If you've been getting reps and playing since day one in your rookie year, you're further along than somebody who came in with no reps and halfway through the year or in the third part of the year. Would we not agree? Also, if you want to take context in how a player is doing, let's take a look and use more data around the surrounding cast. It shows a better correlation. It shows a better idea of how other pieces of parts play a role. Take a look at the rookies and take a look at their average receiver grades. Take a look at the quarterback and then take a look at the average offensive line grades, run blocking grades. Then look at the correlation between the quarterbacks who are performing high on your EPA list versus the quarterbacks that are performing low. And then look at the correlation between the receivers as well as the offensive line. Do you find a correlation between the receivers and the offensive line that have higher grades with the quarterbacks that are playing well? Do you find a better chance that a quarterback plays better the longer he gets? Also, you might not even be, you might have to throw this out because you're trying to extrapolate some idea off of 5 games. That ain't big enough of a sample size. In a clinical study, they run clinical studies for years. They say, what's the sample size? 5 games. Sir, we can't use that data. We can't use that data. He could be an outlier. We can't extrapolate nothing from that. Baker Mayfield, we talked about it. He said, well, they felt Baker Mayfield wasn't a top 10 quarterback, so they moved on. Jay, how many games did Baker play? 90? He played 90 games as a Cleveland Brown. We're trying to make a decision on a guy who's played 5 games and didn't receive reps. But then we're also ignoring the fact, if you want to say he has some low points, you're ignoring the high point in which he showed you in real statistical data. He's one of only quarterbacks to do X, Y, and Z. If you want to say who's thrown for 300, who's thrown for the most yards, he has. If you want to say who's thrown and rushed and done those, he has in history. So you can't take all the lows and eliminate the highs and in 5 games in a small sample size. Just don't work. Statistics can be misleading. Like fallacies that lack evidence to support their claim, statistics are numbers or quantitative data that can be used to misrepresent a claim. Now, I'm not saying that somebody is doing it on purpose. Don't come yelling at me, G. Bush, I said this on purpose. I'm just giving you the scientific data. Don't get mad. A common assumption we make when we see evidence represented as numbers is that the numbers don't lie. People say that all the time. Numbers don't lie. Take the emotion out of it. While it is true that numbers themselves do not lie, the interpretation and presentation of numbers can be misleading or manipulated to create a false impression. This is from the University of Saskatchewan. I didn't create this. I didn't pull this up. We just showed you Simpson's paradox and how numbers can be misleading. Simply stated, Simpson's paradox is a phenomenon in statistics where a trend or relationship that appears in different groups of data disappears or reverses when the groups are combined. It is counterintuitive and sometimes misleading phenomena that can occur when the data is not properly analyzed or interpreted. The numbers don't lie. It's the way in the context that you use the numbers. Let's continue to go on with the exercise, boys and girls. How numbers are used in misleading ways. There's misleading statistics. When numerical data is used in a way that distorts or misrepresents the true meaning or significance of the numbers, they can be used intentionally or unintentionally to manipulate opinions, deceive people, or support a flawed argument. Here are a few common examples. Now, look what I said. They do a great job of covering themselves intentionally or unintentionally. We are not putting intent in this conversation. We're just giving terms. Cherry picking. This occurs when only the data points that support a particular viewpoint or conclusion are selected, ignoring or excluding contradictory data, focusing only on favorable data misrepresent the true picture or trend. Correlation versus causation. Drawing conclusions based solely on correlation, a statistical relationship between two variables without establishing a cause and effect relationship, can be misleading. Just because two variables are associated does not mean that that one directly causes the other, right? We kind of talked about that. Bad receivers, bad quarterback. Does that equal bad play? You have to establish the causation, not just the correlation. Small sample sizes. We just talked about small sample sizes, 5 games. Making sweeping generalizations based on a small sample size can lead to misleading conclusions. A small sample may not be representative of the larger population and can result in a skewed or unreliable result. Bias surveys. Surveys can be manipulated through leading questions. I always tell people, I know 3 guys, but I trust them. Well, I don't know who these guys is, and I don't know what kind of surveys they taking. Bias samples methods or selective reporting of results to achieve a desired outcome. If a survey is not conducted in a fair, unbiased manner, the statistics derived from it can be misleading. Percentages without context. Presenting percentages without providing the relevant context can lead to misleading interpretations. For example, stating that a company's profits increased by 50% may seem impressive, but if the starting point was very low, that increase may not be that significant. Cumulative probabilities. Misleading statistics can arise from misinterpreting cumulative probabilities. For instance, assuming that if a certain event has a 1 in 10 chance of occurring, it will definitely happen after 10 attempts. Each attempt retains the same probability regardless of the previous outcomes. We had an argument about this. The Browns since since 99 have only drafted 2 quarterbacks in the top 10. So if they want to continue this trend, they have to make sure that they draft quarterbacks in the top 10 again, because the more times you do it, the luckier you'll get. No, the probability of you hitting a franchise quarterback is still the same if you take one every single year. The probability is still low. It doesn't mean the more times I do it, the more likely I am to do it. The more times you play the lottery does not mean the more times you got a better chance of winning. Key takeaways. It's important to critically evaluate statistical information, consider the methodology, and you got to be able to explain the methodology so that we can understand how you're getting these numbers, and look for additional context, like watching the games, like looking at other data, maybe checking PFF, maybe talking to scouts. Maybe a cumulative effect can give you more context to avoid falling prey to misleading statistics. And there we have it, boys and girls. Please do your homework. Please do your homework and put that work in so you can have a total picture, and even you can be a firefighter. Shout out to the firefighters, by the way, all the first responders. Coming up next.